Welcome to Life in the Bricks podcast, where we talk to real people about programs that enhance our community so that we can build bigger and better portfolios while providing options for our residents to achieve self-sufficiency. I'm your host, Antonio McGinnis, Executive Director, CEO with the Huntsville Housing Authority. Good afternoon, and welcome to another episode of Life in the Bricks podcast, where we talk to real people about real issues that really have an impact on our community in a very positive way. Today, I am super excited about our guest, Jhuamia Pile with Pain Unwasted. I actually had an opportunity to hear her testimony, and it totally blew me away. And so I'm sure that today, all of our guests will be blessed with the conversation that we're going to touch on today. It's been a long time coming. And so before we engage in conversation, I wanted Mia to have an opportunity to share her testimony through a video that she's prepared for us. So when we finish the video, we'll dive right into our conversation. And I'm telling you, this is going to be a very blessed episode. So we're going to go ahead and cue that video up right now.
Honestly, I was going to just drive my car off a bridge, to be honest. My name is Jhuamia Pile. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, and I now work at the Wildwood Lifestyle Center as a volunteer. And how I got here is an amazing journey that God really blessed. I came here because I had suffered from a nervous breakdown. And the thing is, I had unresolved trauma. You know, growing up, it was a happy home, but it was a home where there was a lot of abuse. I think the worst time in life was probably when my sister was abducted. She was 13 years old, and she was raped by a group of people. They left her for dead on the side of the street. And I remember thinking, our family must be cursed, you know, for things like this to happen, because it didn't seem like it was happening to anyone else around me. I remember I had my daughter, and I thought I was okay. But once I had my daughter, it was like a trigger for me. I couldn't settle the thought of what's gonna happen to her. And in the end, I dropped my daughter off with a friend. And honestly, I was gonna just drive my car off a bridge, to be honest. And somehow, by the grace of God, I landed at a behavioral health hospital. I don't know how, but my husband found me at a hospital, and the Life Alignment program, they called and they set it up for me to come. And so the Life Alignment program, it was amazing. Like, from there, it challenged my deep core thoughts, my feelings, my actions, and it helped me to examine what was going on in my life. And I started to have peace. I was able to forgive those who actually abducted my sister. I was able to forgive those who had abused me and my family. Now, I actually teach the Life Alignment program, which is so amazing, because I get to go in and to know in my own way what people are experiencing, and to realize that, hey, when I walk in there, I can say, listen, whatever you're experiencing right now, this doesn't have to be the end. You know, you can actually come out of this. I know, because I was here.
So Mia, tell us a little bit about yourself and where are you from? What led you to where you are today? So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Awesome. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on here, Tony. This show is amazing, and we love what you do in the community. For those who may have not met me before, of course, Jhuamia Pile. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee, born and raised, and I come from, you know, a lower income community where there's a lot of violence, a lot of drugs. As you saw in the video, my sister was abducted, and she was left, you know, for dead. And so I remember in the community just feeling like there was nothing that we had available to help us in that situation. We just kind of felt like, as a family, you just go on with your regular life. Okay, eat your cereal, go to school. But I remember just having a lot of anger, You know what I mean? Like I remember growing up angry. So that's why we created Pain Unwasted, because the experiences that we've had, we wanted to turn them into opportunities for other people to get resources and learn, okay, what do you do when trauma strikes, when things happen to you?
So you talked about trauma, and I tell you that has been a topic of conversation around here for some time now. But what we've done with that is we've talked about it, but we've really never had the opportunity to take a deep dive. I think growing up in communities like the one I grew up in, the one you grew up in, the neighborhoods that we have to manage at this point in time, people think that you actually grow out of trauma. So what is trauma and what does that mean? Because I think there's a lot of people who don't really understand what trauma is and how to deal with it. So what would be your definition of trauma?
Awesome. I'm glad you asked that. You know, when you think about trauma, I think of it as unwanted leftovers, right? Like everybody has a meal that they love. But what about when you have that meal that you wish you didn't have? And then at the end of the day, the meal's not over. It's still there. It's still there every day. Every day it's coming up. It's affecting your body, you know? And so trauma is those leftovers or that residue after a situation happens to you that was distressing, you know, and it can show up physically, it can show up mentally, definitely emotionally, for sure.
So
And mhm.
oh, go ahead, go ahead.
And so I have an example for that, you know, like I think about I remember when I was going to have my daughters, right? And we talked about that in the video. That would be an example, you know. I couldn't settle the thought of what's going to happen to my kids. And that's trauma showing up like, oh man, and I'm battling with paranoia because I'm thinking somebody else is gonna, you know, kidnap my kids. And that trauma happened when, you know, maybe 10 years before I was a mom, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden here it comes where I'm paranoid that somebody's gonna, you know, abduct my kids, having not dealt with the past.
Let me ask you this. Why do you think people are afraid to deal with trauma and sometimes not don't even want to talk about it? What do you think are some of those things that will keep somebody from thinking that not talking about it is going to help the situation?
Man, that is so layered, right? And I'm glad you asked that. You know, number one, I believe it can be historical in the sense that when I think about the history of Black people as slaves, we were not allowed to really have emotions and feelings. Our people are being sold into slavery. You getting beat, maybe something cut off, but you're supposed to just get back in the field and act like it's okay. And so I think that's one, which I guess you could call that systemic example, right? And so we have that, you know, pass it down, don't say nothing, you're going to be all right, you're going to be okay. I think another reason that people actually don't deal with it, which goes untalked about, is toxic faith. Toxic faith, this idea that you just pray about it, God's going to take care of it, He's going to get them in the end. And so you decide, I'm just going to pray about it, and that's enough. But you see so many people in the religious community that are struggling mentally, right? Because while yes, prayer is a beautiful tool, it's not the end all. It's not it, when I say end all, it's not the only step. It's the first step, right? I think another reason, Tony, if I may just say this, that people don't really want to deal with their trauma is just flat out it hurts. You know, you feel like if I talk about it, am I going to be able to recover from it? Will I actually do better acting like it never happened to me? You know?
I want to touch on something you said that, oftentimes people tell folks to pray about it, but in a lot of inner city communities where people are struggling to find hope and they don't necessarily have the faith to pray,
Mm-hmm.
how do we help people? I believe in prayer. I believe that, you know, there will be some retribution for people who've done you wrong. But how do we help people who are struggling, first of all, with a sense of faith and hope to deal with trauma? Because they're not connected to a church, they're not connected to the faith community. So how can we as believers help people who are not necessarily connected deal with a lot of the trauma that they've gone through and from time to time continue to go through? How do we help them?
Oh, that's so good. I'm glad you asked that because I like how you said, hey, this person may be a believer. However, they're not necessarily connected to a church. They're not going somewhere every weekend or every week, right? But they may believe in God. And I totally believe in God now. And I believe in prayer that is powerful now. But there was a definite period in my life where I didn't. And so, one thing I would say to those who are faith based listening is one, have compassion and what's that word, understanding that, for some people they're going to be angry, like, okay, you're telling me to believe in God or trust God, but God allowed this to happen, and so having the patience to understand that people will have hard questions about faith in terms of why would God allow something like this to happen, and as a faith community being prepared to hear those answers and possibly have something that we can say about that. I think another thing is this show is amazing. Like this podcast, I feel that you're absolutely doing it in this show because, hey, the Mia, the 15-year-old Mia was not going to a church, you know what I mean? But maybe I would have watched the show that was going to deal with my issues, and I can watch your podcast from my living room. I can get tips, I can get tools and strategies. And I don't know about you, Tony, but for me, one thing is like building trust in the resources that are out there, right? Because we can definitely get hurt by even people who mean well, right? But being able to understand that. And I think lastly, I would say getting classes out to the community, like something that Pain Unwasted does. We try to go into our communities and offer classes about trauma and mental health so that people come to it from a place of power, like, hey, I'm learning something, I'm going to be certified, and this is also, while I help learn how to help somebody else, it's going to help me too.
Right. So, just kind of based on what you just said, is there a time limit that we should give people to deal with trauma?
For getting better, right?
Yeah.
Man, absolutely not. I don't think so. So I know, of course, the DSM-5, which is the book that they use, social workers, clinicians, they're going to use that book for diagnosis, right? And a lot of times, depending on which version that you read, it may say if you've been experiencing issues for more than 4 weeks, then it's time to reach out to a professional. But we already know in our community, most people go many years without getting any help whatsoever. Like I literally was talking to a 90-year-old woman just the other day. Her daughter was killed at a party years ago, back when this lady's like 40, and she's now only able to talk about it. You know what I mean? And so definitely I love it. One of my therapists, because I go to therapy even though I do this work, right? She said you can't go in a forest 1,000 steps and think you're getting out in only 3 steps. Things take time.
And what I want to say about that is we definitely need to encourage people. And I know oftentimes when people are struggling and they're going from day to day, you know, they're encouraged, man, get over it, get over it. That happened last year. That
Yeah.
man, but you can't necessarily put a cap on when people are able to get over the pain. I tell people all the time, being in this industry, I mean, here I am, the executive director of the housing authority. First of all, we shouldn't even be talking about this. We should be talking about how we can uh, get people into housing. But my sole purpose is to help people get out of this kind of housing.
Yeah.
And oftentimes you can't get out until you can deal with some of the things that have hurt you in your past. So every time I come to work, I tell people all the time, I drive through the communities and I'm reminded of some of the trauma that I went through that I've never dealt with, that I have to learn how to get over. And it's not one of those things that, it'll be over when you get 16. Well, when you get 21 or when you get married, we have to help people understand that the best way to get over some of this trauma is to deal with it, get the help. And which leads to my next question: how do people get help? how do we encourage people to get help to deal with some of the pain that they're going through, especially not only going through, but passing down to the next generation?
So good, so good. So allow me to just like, I feel like I should take off my coat, right? Because first of all, I want to say thank you for giving a voice to it, because the question is, how do I get over it so that I can make new steps in my life to progress me forward, right? How can I get over this so I can get better in every way of my life? And you just spoke to it. And I just really appreciate that, because here you are, a man, and men are not allowed to have feelings. You're just supposed to be strong, right? But as a man, you're speaking about your experience. You're giving a voice to other men, to other boys that don't realize, hey, it's okay to not be okay. You know what I mean? If you're not okay, that's okay. That's great that you can actually realize it, because guess what? A lot of this gun violence, fights, domestic violence, it's happening because of the traumas that we've experienced, and we don't realize, that it's coming from that. We didn't learn anger management, for instance, or how to actually identify my emotions and say, hey, I'm not mad, I'm actually hurt. You know what
Mm,
I mean? But a lot of times, especially for males, hurt comes out as anger, you know? And so I love that you're talking about that. And I want to say something. You talked about, you were kind of bringing up poor coping strategies, right? How does the person go from the bricks to maybe another type of housing and life situation? And sometimes we use bad, I don't want to say bad, we use ways of coping that actually keep us stuck, right? That keep a system or a cycle going. And I want to talk about this. Like, I remember I remember being raped, Tony, in our community. You know what I mean? And the way I tried to deal with that was, I'm going to get another boyfriend, right? And that boyfriend is going to be better with him. It's going to erase that terrible memory of being raped. And so we find that our young ladies sometimes are becoming promiscuous, just trying to now deal with what has happened to them. Does that make sense? And
mm,
so, what are we going to do about it? I believe that, one, we have to know that, hey, that was actually a problem. When that happened to you, whatever it was, that was not okay. That was bad, because that was that, and it was not your fault,
right.
especially for our kids. Them understanding there's certain things that are happening. This is not normal. This is something that happens all the time, but it may be normal, but not okay. Let's put it that way. Right. So being able to recognize that, and then understanding what resources I actually have. Some people benefit from therapy. Some people benefit from coaching. Some people benefit from self help strategies. Right. So being able to figure out what I have access to, um, and who can help me get to that next step. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And you said a lot that I wish I can just kind of rewind and go question for question that I have.
Yeah.
Um, but the one thing that I really would like to touch on, my one of my best friends and I, we talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
We normalize stuff because it happens all the time, even though we know that it's not normal.
Yeah.
For instance, growing up in public housing or growing up in the neighborhood or being in the neighborhood, we could have somebody that dies, whether that, stabbed, shot, or whatever.
Hmm.
And we normalize it like, man, well, it was bound to happen. He goes and he hangs out over here, here, here. And before you know it, we're normalizing violence, even when it leads to death. Or somebody, I'm not knocking anyone who has a child out of wedlock, or, somebody who has multiple children by multiple different people. We normalize it, and we think that because it happens all the time, it's okay. And it's not. And I think in the inner city communities, we have to, first of all, love on people to help them understand that, okay, let's look at some of the choices you've made in life and let's see how we can redirect and go in a different way. But normalizing behavior that is not normal, that bothers me, even now as an adult who's been through it.
And it's so true. And when I'm listening to you, I'm thinking of it as one of those coping mechanisms again, right? Like, how am I going to cope with this? I don't have any tools. It's got to either become normal, or I'm going to deal with it with some other adverse coping strategy, like perhaps drinking, drugs, sex, to make the pain, dull the pain, like sometimes my family and we are very intentional. My husband and we're intentional about having hard conversations. And that's something I learned from taking a class about mental health. The importance of having hard conversations with people where you don't have this mask on, where you're not pretending to be something you're not. And it can be uncomfortable. You feel like, man, this is so uncomfortable. I need something to deaden the pain. I got to distract myself. I got to do something to cope because it's so heavy. But once again, I believe the answer for me has been, Mia, it's okay to not be okay. As a woman of color, if I need to break down, I need to break down. Like, there's a toxic strength for women and men, right? That, you just got to keep your game face on, and until it falls off because you now have cancer or diabetes, high blood pressure, fibromyalgia, things that maybe your body is turning your pain into illness, right? Because I'm just strong. I just got to hang in there. And I'm a big proponent, like, and if I can say this, one thing that really helped me, Tony, was value, right? I heard you say it like, hey, so and so got stabbed and what's gonna happen to him? Like, learning how valuable I was, teaching our kids how valuable and precious they are. You're not just one in a million. You're the only you. Nobody can replace you. They may have your name, your address, but they can't replace you. What is your value? What are you worth? That's
Mhm.
a huge one.
So another thing that I want to just kind of address, as we go through and we deal with some of the trauma that we deal with, a lot of times, we have conversations like small trauma, big trauma, get
Hmm.
over it. How do we help people deal with, there's no small trauma.
Right.
It's according to what you can bear. How do we help people understand that?
I love that. I'm glad you asked that. So, I'm a trainer. I train in mental health first aid, and one of the things that we teach when we teach mental health first aid is impact. Right. Some of us who are watching this, you've been in a car accident before, and when you have a car accident, you could have a fender bender, right? You could have where they just hit the back of your car, it's dented in, but you can still drive your car. Then others of us, I know I've had a car like this where somebody hit the side, right? You can still drive your car, but you got to get in from the back seat or something like that. You got a bag on your window, right? But your car's still drivable. And then you have other things where it's like it's total. Your car is total, and you might be looking at the car and like, how are they gonna total this? My car, I could, but the insurance has said it's total, not drivable.
Mhm.
The end, right? And so think about people's mental health like that. We never know what issue will create a fender bender for someone, right? Or that get in the back seat to get inside your car, or a totaled car. We don't get to say that because everybody's different. And we also don't know what's compounding for people, right? Like, you know, in I remember being in Walmart about to lose it, right? Because I'm thinking once again that paranoia, unresolved trauma, somebody's gonna steal my kids. But somebody would have saw me and just thought she's having a fit about, not having enough money to pay for this cheese, girl, get over it. You know what I mean? But they don't realize there's a backstory to what's happening, you
Mhm.
know? And so you're totally right. What affects one person may not affect the other one the same way. Let me give one more example, can I? I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
it's the time,
No,
but
go ahead.
I mean, I think about it. I mean, I don't know about you, but I've been in my fair share of fights growing up. And I think about impact like this, like one person, two people get in a fight, right? They get in a fight, and one person's like, dang, darn, that was a good hit. They hit me in my face. Wow. Like, I'm going to put some ice on it. And the other person is like, I can't believe they hit me. Like, how could they put their hands on me? Like, it's like so devastating, and it's all about our personal individual makeup. And so just because the other person's like, dang, that was a good punch, I'm gonna be all right. And the other one's like, they put their hands on me. I can't believe it. Like it's different. It's individual.
Yeah, and I don't think we should minimize anybody's level of trauma or pain because we're stronger, and we do that oftentimes. We do that in the community. I can remember growing up in neighborhoods, and I might be upset about one thing and you might be upset about something else, or somebody come back and say, man, both of y'all need to chill out because this is what I'm going through. Everything that we go through that hurts us and causes us pain need to be dealt with, and we don't need to normalize it. So I want to ask you this: what are some of the platforms that we could use, and where could people go to start to get the help, and what can we do in our communities to start to create safe places for people to start to get that help?
Oh, that's so good. Okay, so I want to talk about resources. So a lot of people don't know there's things out there that are for free. And so I invite people. So first of all, betterhelp.com is a resource. So like say you're watching this and you want to get help, maybe you are a professional or you are becoming a professional or you're just thinking about it. You know what I mean? Either way, betterhelp.com is a great resource because now it can give you access to people that may be outside of your sphere of influence or outside of your circle of friends, right? To be able to get help. There's another company, therapy for Black girls.com, and then there's therapy for black men.com. And I love that one because their tagline is strength still needs support, right? So these are just like search engines where you can go on there and you can literally have access to coaches, to therapists, and other types of people that do healing work. And I would just say when you're engaging therapy, some people are burned out. They've been working so hard and they've needed a break and haven't taken one. So if at first you don't succeed, try again. Like, don't be surprised if the therapist that you connect with isn't very helpful.
Hmm.
It may just be a bad fit. It may not mean that person's not a good therapist. It just may be a bad fit, bad timing, bad season for them or you. So keep trying, even if you don't like the first person. Another one is looking online for support groups. So for instance, there's AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, is one that people can always engage in. There's another one, they grief share, because a lot of things that we're dealing with is grief. And we may not realize it. We think it's stress, but it's grief, right? And so
Hmm.
griefshare.org, and they share with you different places in your city where they may be having an in-person group. And I believe Grief Share is free. I think you just have to give like maybe a donation, maybe depending on your site, and the donation is up to you, right? Another thing that I really invite people to take, and that's because I'm passionate about it, and that is find out how you can take mental health first aid. Okay. They have mental health first aid for teens, mental health first aid for youth, mental health first aid for adults. It's a certification course, so it looks good on your resume. It also, for those who need continuing education units, I think this is a big one in the community, Tony. Like getting mental health first aid into our communities because it teaches people how to help somebody before a crisis, in a crisis, after a crisis, but then it also gives them resources. So they become like a person that can say, oh, have you tried this or that? Did you know you have access to this? Um, and so I think that's a good resource to implement in our communities, right? Yeah.
And I'm glad you shared those. And as
Yeah.
people look at this podcast and it's shared, on different platforms. Please remember those names and those web addresses, because I'm really serious about helping people deal with trauma and the pain. I also want to kind of touch on, maybe the consequences of people, having this information that they're going to hear today and not doing anything with it. The consequences of what that looks like.
Yeah, that's good. So, one thing we like to say also is the longer the delay, the more difficult recovery can be. So, first of all, it's important for those who are watching on, listen, recovery is always possible, no matter what your issue is. I mean, I'm talking people who have been diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar disease, you're hearing voices, having hallucinations. Recovery is always possible. It doesn't matter what is going on, okay? Recovery is always possible. If you're alive, you can recover, right? However, the longer the delay, the more difficult it can be, And so, definitely, this is something we pass down to the next generation when we don't recover. So, imagine yourself having grandkids. Do you want them to have the same mindset? Do you want them to deal with their problems the same way people dealt with them with you? Right? And so do you how long do you want to be here with good health? You know what I mean? Because some people think, oh, I'll be dead at 50, and then they're living at 60, but their quality of life sucks. You know what I mean? And they didn't think they'd live this long, but they wind up living that long, and they're suffering. So yeah.
So basically, our stinking thinking and the way we act can have an effect on the children we love, the people we're raising, the people in our homes, because we're refusing to get the help that we need. It can have a impact on everybody that we love, and we just have a family of people who are just sour growing up
Absolutely.
in the community.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely. Even think about relationships, right? Because there are some people I know you're watching this and you're like, "Hey, I'm high functioning. Like I've been able to, get a well-paying job. I got a nice car, nice family. I'm good. I overcame the problems of the past." But that may be true and it may be really true, you know what I mean, but consider that sometimes trauma shows up in how we're going to train and talk to our kids, how we're going to what opportunities we're going to allow them to have or not have. It may not always be that, daddy beat me up but I'm not beating up my kids. No, you may not be beating them up, but what are you saying to them in their daily life that actually is beating them up? You know what I mean? Or what expectations do you have on them? And here's a big one, Tony. Am I living in joy? Am I enjoying my life? Like some good ice cream down to the last little flirt where you're like, like I didn't realize how much better my life could be. I thought my life was already good. I'm doing mission work. I'm giving back to in my community. I'm traveling the world. I'm married. I didn't realize trauma was going to show up 10 years into my marriage. You know what I'm saying? I'm in the hospital ready to kill myself or somebody else. You know what I mean? So be proactive. Even if you feel like I'm good, be proactive. You take care of your car, you take care of your shoes, take care of your mind.
That's powerful. That's so powerful. So listen, as we're gonna have to have you back,
Yeah.
because you can't talk about this in 30, 35 minutes and think that we've solved all the world's problems. We gotta have you back so that we can talk about this. But I also, before we go, I I want you to tell us about, because I'm looking at pain wasted.
Yeah.
That is so, pain unwasted. I'm sorry, pain unwasted. And I think about, um, there's a lot even in that title.
Yeah.
Could you share with us, as we kind of wrap this up, how you got to that point of pain unwasted? Because I just think that's so powerful. The whole title. Just share with us a little bit about that.
All right, I'm gonna try to keep it short, but it's honestly something that I feel that God put on our heart because I remember being in college and struggling with the traumas of my community in the past. And a lady came and gave her testimony about, what happened to her daughter. This is a whole nother show, okay? So we won't go into it. Something that happened to her daughter. And she was able to stand on a stage and she's encouraging us as college students, like, God is still good no matter what happens to you. And at that time, I didn't want to believe in God anymore. So I was just like, no, this is crazy. But I remember going back to my dorm room. And I just will say this lady, she'd been praying to find her daughter healthy and she found her dead, right? But she was still on this stage giving God praise and she's sharing her experience with us. And I remember going back to my dorm room fighting with God, like, you're not fair. I don't appreciate this. How could you let this happen? And I heard a still small voice just tell me, your pain is not a waste, Mia. Your pain is not a waste. Like the things you've experienced, you're going to help people. You're going to help many people. I don't waste your pain. And, later, years later, I would tell my husband about these stories, and that experience with God. And he came up with the title Pain Unwasted, because that lady's pain was not wasted on us. It was horrible what she went through. However, she used it to inspire other people, not that, hey, nothing bad will ever happen, but that you can survive it and thrive. And so that's where it's coming from.
Wow. So, and the reason I say that, I feel like, it's such a powerful title. I think back to, I have a video that I share. It's called My Story. And I'll have to share it with you. So,
Please.
matter of fact, I'll send it to you after this. And um, growing up in public housing, my mom and dad were divorced. My dad actually, you know, he grew up in the church, and so my mom did too. But my dad took me to church all the time. But my mom, me and my other brothers, we're living in public housing, and and I'm like, I don't think I have to live like this. And it wasn't until later on in life that I realized I had to go through that so that I can serve better
Come on.
position that I'm in now.
Come
So
on.
about pain unwasted, I think about
Mhm.
everything being picked on, not having lights on sometimes, the
Come on.
struggles that me and my brothers went through, and
Yep.
sometimes folks not even knowing.
Yep.
Realized that pain was unwasted
Yes.
because now I'm able to empathize.
Come on.
I go out and see somebody struggling, and it's
Yep.
not pointing the finger at them as if they've done something wrong. It's more, hey, you're here for a reason.
Yes.
So you don't think it's all about the mistakes you've made in life, but you're going to be able to look back at this one day and understand why you had to go through it. So I just thank you all for sharing that, because I feel like that's such a powerful
Yeah.
title, and it's just so much strength in that.
Thank you.
So how can people get in contact with you? What do they need to know about you?
Absolutely. For those who want to get in contact with me, you can reach us at painunwasted.org. You can go on there, click on the contact page, reach out to us, and that will be great.
And again, we're going to have you. Our goal is to have you reach out to our property managers.
Sure.
We have about 1,500 public housing homes,
Yeah.
and the average home has about two to three people living in it, and so that's a lot of people that need to be able to have resources. So we're going to get our property managers trained up so
Yeah.
that they'll be equipped to help people deal with pain. We're going to have you back
Yeah.
uh, as much as you want to come back to talk about this and to share. And I appreciate you just taking time out of your schedule to meet with me and to kind of start this, lay this firm foundation so that we can help people deal with some of the things that they've gone through. Anything that you want to share as a final word or last comment?
I just want to say it's an honor. It's an honor to be able to come on your show. It's an honor to behold what you're doing in the community and your team. And to anyone that is watching and you live in public housing, I just want to invite us to gratefulness. You know what I mean? Like, I've been so grateful when I look back on my experience of being in public housing and no longer being there. I had a roof over my head. I had people that cared about me, people that invested in me, that helped me to go from where I was to where I am now. And so this season that you're in, it can end, and be good and be great. And so thank you. Thank you for all that y'all do in the community, Tony, and all that will happen in the future.
Awesome. I thank you for being on the show. And I'm going to end with this just because you said that. It's weeping may endure for a night, but joy will come in the morning. And so I'm grateful to have you. I just want everybody who listens in on the show, share this on all your social media platforms. This has been a great episode. I know there are going to be some testimonies that come out of this. So again, thank you all for listening. Don't forget to share it. And this has been another great episode of Life in the Bricks podcast. Thank you. We've come to the end of the podcast today. Please share the link on all your social media platforms. We hope that you all will join us again next time. Until then, keep serving and keep pushing. This has been another amazing episode of Life in the Bricks podcast. Peace.